Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like first to thank Lord Hugh Dykes, Sir Eldon Griffiths, and the Executive Board of the European Atlantic Group for inviting me here. I am honored to appear before your distinguished gathering. As a Libyan, I feel a tremendous sense of pride. We have finally been able to remove a terrible dictator and a menace to the world. On behalf of myself and the Libyan people, I would like to express our gratitude to the British people for their support. The United Kingdom took the lead very early on and rallied the United States, France, and the world for intervention to save lives. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that the mission has been purely humanitarian. Ladies and gentlemen, had we not acted on Saturday, March 19th, I am sure Gaddafi would have leveled the city of Benghazi and massacred hundreds of thousands of helpless Libyan civilians. This megalomaniac, psychopath, would have used the arsenal of weapons of mass destruction on the Libyan people if the United Kingdom and the United States did not remove them from his possession only a few years ago. This is truly a moment in history where we can say with confidence that Western and Arab and Muslim and Libyan interests have converged in the most profound way. Ladies and gentlemen, many people wonder whether what happened in Tunis and Egypt gave rise to the Libyan revolution. I'm sure no one here has any doubt that the Libyan people have suffered for a long time. In my talk today, I will share with you a few facts which have not been publicly and widely known. In the year 1999, or the year 1999, marks a very important turning point in Libya's history. And the Libyan people at the time were in bad shape. Their condition was terrible, imposed sanctions from the UN, took a toll at every level. Quality of life was one of the worst in the region. Libya was in a very dismal state. Hope and faith by the Libyan people and the exiled Libyan community to rescue them was marked with hopelessness and helplessness. Many Libyans, like myself, came to the ultimate conclusion that the regime change can only happen by stepping on the inside and creating the right set of conditions for the Libyan people to rise. But how was the big question. Gaddafi's iron grip was tighter than ever. We knew it would take a long time. We had to start somewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1999, I began to wonder if the United Kingdom's constructive engagement with the Libyan regime can provide a glimpse of hope. Can I initiate such an approach on my own? I asked. Deep down in my heart and mind, I had tremendous hesitation and reservations. I had fear not only from the brutality of the Gaddafi regime, but potential loss of a decade of human rights activism through the Libyan Human Rights Commission. The other question is, can I risk my relations with the exiled Libyan community? But I knew openness by the Libyan people to the outside world will inevitably result in the demise of the Gaddafi regime. That became an internal monologue for me for the next 10 years. I've always admired the UK's doctrine of political engagement with its enemies. It reopened its embassy in Tripoli in 1999, and I figured, I guess, the United States will follow sooner or later. During a testimony to the U.S. Congress in July 1999, I made an appeal for the release of political prisoners, an appeal to release my brother, Dr. Turbi, who had been there for 17 years, and I called the U.S. government to resume and begin a dialogue and a constructive engagement process to normalize relations with the Libyan regime. This took many Libyans by surprise and took everybody by surprise. The toughest choice for me was engaging a dictatorial regime that killed and imprisoned members of my family and friends for many years. However, for the next 2 years, I had an indirect dialogue with the Libyan regime, always calling for the release of political prisoners. The message was always the same. In June 2002, I arranged for Sir Odin Griffiths, who's here with us tonight. He was the chairman of the World Affairs Councils of America then. Sir Odin Griffiths went to Libya and took 2 specific messages and notes with him. A thank you note to Gaddafi for releasing my brother and political prisoners, okay, and an appeal to allow Libyan exiles to have a safe passage and return to Libya. That was very important to me. The second was a very somber verbal message by Sir Odin Griffiths that he carried with him from Washington. At the time, I wasn't aware of it until it showed up in the media after he had come back. It was a somber message to Gaddafi himself when he met with him, and the message said, if you want a relationship with the United States, you must give up your weapons of mass destruction ambitions. Then we move on to the rest of constructive engagement that had taken place between the year 2003 and 2008. We began to realize successes. Of course, the successful dismantling of the arsenal of weapons of mass destruction, which I still believe that if Gaddafi had those weapons in his possession this last February and during the revolution, he would for sure have used them against the Libyan people. Another success and a monument in this constructive process is the release of over 400 political prisoners from Libyan jails. Through my frequent travels over the next 8 to 9 years, the dialogue I had with the Libyan regime and members of the Libyan cabinet was around getting concessions to allow the members of the Libyan exiled community to travel into Libya without being harassed at airports or actually internally in the country. And I felt that I had those assurances, and the Libyan regime was actually doing so. They had fears of possibly the change of relationships with the West and the United States if they hadn't done something like that. Of course, over time, as relations begin to improve between the United States, United Kingdom, and Libya, confidence-building measures between them started to take place, which actually made the Libyan regime relax a little bit and allow a little bit of dissent. Not much, but a little bit of dissent. So the more secure the Libyan regime or Gaddafi regime felt over the last 10 years, the more openness it had become, allowing some level of dissent. I believe the culmination of constructive engagement over the past 10 years helped. I have no doubt the constructive engagement and the openness in Libya over the past 10 years has actually helped the revolution take place this last February. And I turn to my vision, ladies and gentlemen, of what ought to be done in Libya. Libya has great potential to become a vibrant economy, a positive regional player, and a prosperous nation. It has excellent natural resources, of course. As we all know, it has got great crude oil, cash reserves, and more than $700 billion of foreign investments all over the world, from Asia to the United States, to Europe, to Africa. However, the greatest challenge we face is creating jobs and empowering a huge and a growing young Libyan population. 80% of Libyans are under the age of 35. Do you believe that? And 60% of that population segment is under the age of 25. That whole total Libyan society is 25% of it is unemployed and has been unemployed for a number of years. Libya's GDP per capita is less than $12,000. Would you believe that over 20% of the Libyan people, which represents around 1.3 million people out of 5.5 million, live at the poverty level? Unfortunately, much of the direct foreign investment by oil companies, infrastructure firms going into the country in the past 8-9 years failed to produce or improve employment. In fact, many Libyan engineers who worked for the National Oil Corporation fled to the Arab Gulf states in the past 4 to 5 years. You can also find Libyan pilots, medical doctors, professors that work in the Gulf states, and we hope to get them back soon. Recent estimates by the World Bank put the average annual growth in the productivity of labor in Libya at -2%. That's a very disappointing figure, of course. The Libyan business environment requires tremendous, significant improvement. Listen to this, ranked at 109th in the world. That's unbelievable. 109th in the world. Only Albania and Paraguay rank lower. That's sad. Perhaps the biggest fear I have, post the Gaddafi regime, it's hard to believe that we are now starting to say post the Gaddafi regime, that people's time will be most spent trying to capture a greater share of the windfall. It's an oil-producing country. There's a lot of money. Trying to capture that rather than engaging in productive employment and productive enterprise. Here's what we need to do. In the near term, we need to address the fundamental aspirations of the Libyan people. Very important to start this. Redefine relations between the state and the people. Of course, that manifests itself in adopting a constitution that reflects the aspirations and the sentiments of the Libyan people. Very important. This will give birth to a new governance built on a rock-solid system of qualified representation. This is important. Transparency and accountability. And we hope that would be the form of democracy that we aspire for the Libyan people and our neighbors. Reducing unemployment to less than 7% or something close to that in the next 48 months, to be specific, must be a top priority. Must be a top priority. And that, or we will pay 3 to 4 years down the road, we will pay for having many people that are not unemployed. So we need to get going and implement a process that would reduce the level of unemployment. Here's what we can do. I had a glimpse of hope when the National Economic Development Board was established in 2006 at the recommendation of the Monitor Group. It's a group that was headed by professors from Harvard University. It was to be an emulation of the Singapore and the Irish Economic Development Boards. Instead, it was riddled with corruption, inflated high salaries, thousands and thousands of percentage relative to Libyan salaries of the people that ran it. It was a conduit, believe it or not. It was a source of money for liberation movements and political campaigns of social movements in some parts of the world by Saif al-Gaddafi himself and his father. In more than 3 years, EDB did not help reduce unemployment at all, nor bring any foreign investment. The National Economic Development Board must provide the proper industrial and hospitable climate for foreign investors to build and manufacture goods in Libya. We must start to implement confidence-building measures in international contracts. This is important. First, we carefully need to evaluate existing ones and root out any corruption that might be built into these contracts. Second, we have to affirm the rules of the International Arbitration Association with respect to arbitration locations and prevailing languages. We need to incorporate the English language side by side with the Arabic language for interpretation. This has always been a problem and an obstacle for foreign companies entering Libya. We will need to establish watchdog organizations, meaning now that we have a democratic society, we can establish civil society. We need to establish watchdog organizations, reputable, strong, to assure transparency, accountability, and a corruption-free business environment. We must immediately start an application to the World Trade Organization, WTO, and quickly secure a credit rating. Libya has a lot of cash, but it's very important in its dealings with the outside world that it does have a credit rating. It's very important. We must employ the best means, legal and otherwise, to trace and repatriate Libyan state assets worldwide, which exist all over the world, from Asia to Europe to Africa to the United States, large numbers. Libyan foreign assets are estimated at more than $700 billion all over the place. We should hope to make them more efficient and better income producing assets. We must build human capacity to create a productive, skilled workforce. Libyans are very confident and hospitable people and can easily absorb and adapt to working side by side with highly qualified, skilled immigrants. However, we must have a very sound immigration policy. Must be adopted, not like before. It has to be a good, solid policy. We must create an economy that is fully integrated with the world markets. We don't live alone. We must build a world-class infrastructure, starting with master plans for water, wastewater, and solid waste. These are two important master plans, and they're important if you want to build large tracts of homes. There's over 500,000 homes shortage in Libya. If we want to start that, these master plans must be started immediately. We must improve the telephone communications, landlines, mobile internet services to be state-of-the-art, equal or better than those of Europe. We have to build a world-class airliner, a flagship connecting Africa with the Middle East, Europe, and beyond. We need to ramp up, of course, tourism and allow people to come and visit Libya without any of these complications of visas. It should be an easy process. We have to strengthen cooperation between Libyan educational institutions, universities, and industries coming into the country, and encourage research and partnerships with leading Western universities. Very, very important. We have to increase educational exchanges and missions here to the UK, to Europe, to the United States, many places for our youth. We need hundreds of Libyans to travel, not few numbers. We need maybe in the thousands as early as possible. And now we come to my vision of what Libya's foreign relations should be with the outside world. Libya's relations with the world should always be based on mutual respect and the respect of international law. Libya and the Libyan people respect and recognize NATO's role in saving lives. But I do have a very, very important recommendation and a suggestion, is that the Libyan interim government, the National Transition Council, establish a fund as soon as possible. $1 billion, $2 billion, I don't know what the number should be, but it should be enough funds in the fund to pay member NATO countries that took part in saving Libyan lives. It could be a portion of it, it could be a good substantial part of it. That way, there isn't any a shadow of a doubt or any exploitation by a NATO member of any contracts or business in Libya. That way, there's not any undue influence. Very important, and I highly recommend that. I look to our Libyan ambassadors and Libyan embassies around the world to be a model that is well connected in the environment they operate in, must have great knowledge of local languages, culture, education, business, economics, and politics. This is very important to connect with the world. We must have secure borders and the means to control illegal immigration. Of course, we know a lot of illegal immigration flows from south of the Sahara to Europe now and needs to be controlled. and the flow of drugs, terrorism, and also weapons. And we know there's lots of weapons loose now. The UK can play a very important role in this. For decades, Libyans frequented the UK more than any country in Europe. There are thousands, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 Libyans that live in the UK. We must recognize, however, our cultural and religious differences as very healthy. Libya is an Arab and a Muslim country and derives its core values from Islam and will always stand for the rights of the Palestinian people. The British and the Libyan people have a golden opportunity to become closer partners. We need the UK to ease on entry visas. We'll do our part. We'll make sure Libyans come here and return home. We'll try to make it as attractive as possible for Libyans to come home. However, we need to make it easier for hundreds, if not thousands of them to come, seek knowledge, have work internships. We want them to come here and work in the UK in businesses to learn how businesses run, okay, and then come back home. We need British businesses that come and do business in Libya to make sure to exercise transparency, accountability, and when doing business in Libya, we need you, UK companies, to fight corruption, not participate in corruption, please. We need your help in providing us with the best accounting of Libyan assets in the UK, or for that matter, anywhere else that you might be aware of, okay? Under the Libyan State Sovereign Fund or the country of Libya, or for that matter, under the Gaddafi family. And now I'm ready for any questions. Thank you very much for being a great audience.